Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim CEO show. Our vision is Muslims leading the way in solving the world's biggest problems. So this is the place for you if you want to become an amazing leader or grow your business or organization to the next level. We do this by learning from those that have been there, done it and bought the thobe. I'm your brother and host Mohammad Arshad, and today I'm really excited to have with me the wonderful Saiful Islam. Assalamu alaikum Saiful.
Barakatuh.
How are you doing
Thank you for
today?
having me. Good, alhamdulillah. Just like I was saying to you earlier, this environment does tend to add a lot of heat into the room, so I'm good other than that. Alhamdulillah.
Good, mashallah. So I'm very, very excited to have you on the show because you've had some experiences, like great experiences, mashallah, working with big brands, working with influencers within the Muslim market. Because also I love it because influence as a topic is one of my favorite subjects, right? So I'm really, really looking forward to getting into all of it with you, inshallah. But for those of you that don't know, let me just give you a quick background and a quick introduction to Saiful, right? So Saiful is the co-founder of Muslim Influencer Network, MIN, right? So he's also the executive on the board of directors at Muslim. That's MVSLIM, which you've probably seen as well. And he specializes in diversity, faith, and inclusion-based communication. He's been recognized as a top 50 thought leader in the influencer marketing sector and developed social media strategies for some of the world's highest profile speakers. Previously, he's overseen digital transformations, increasing revenue from £300,000 to £2 million for some of the leading Muslim organizations, as well as overseeing strategy for global mainstream organizations, including Anchor, Butter, Primark, and the UN. So there's so much more that I can go into, but I'm going to save it for the rest of the show. So I want to begin, Saiful, with the question that I ask everyone, which is, what was 10-year-old Saiful like?
Oh, I don't know if I want to go back there. 10-year-old Saif, I think he was a completely different person to who I am today. So today, when you're a co-founder of a business, you wear so many different hats, you're trying to spin so many different plates, you're having to be, a lot of the times, the person that you never thought you would be. And you're forward looking in the moment every time you're living, every time you're business transacting. 10-year-old Saif was an introvert. Like I remember the times when my mum, she'd come downstairs and, she'd come upstairs and find me in my room, and we'd have guests downstairs and family members. She'd be like, "Are you not coming downstairs?" And I'm like, "No, I'm okay here. I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't want to speak to my cousins, friends, family members." I just wasn't comfortable with the idea of speaking to people. So the 10-year-old Saif, my parents are very, very different. They're very, very unique in both ways, and I love them to bits, and alhamdulillah, they're my role models. But my mum was the extrovert. She was always the person who was very personable, very accessible, conversational. And my dad was he was methodical, he was quiet, he was reserved, and he liked being behind the scenes. And I think I took my personality when I was 10 from my dad, and that's who I was. I liked to keep myself to myself with sports. I wasn't really into business, although I was interested in the idea of money, like most teenagers are, trying to think, okay, what works, what doesn't. But yeah, 10-year-old Saif was a very different person. I wasn't practicing as a Muslim, so the identity that I try and aspire towards today is very different to the values that I might have had when I was 10. So I'd probably say that they were probably the biggest differences, and that's probably an idea of who 10-year-old Saif was.
Amazing. So I've met a lot of different brothers and sisters who are really good at speaking, just like yourself, mashallah, right? And a lot of them say they're introverts. So do you feel that you've kind of had to become more extroverted, or do you feel like this is just like the natural growth that someone like you kind of goes through?
I think like this idea of like, what is really an extrovert, and most people have like the dictionary definition and this idea of someone that is comfortable speaking in public, networking, making, warm, bubbly, eccentric almost. And I think today's businessman, especially from a Muslim perspective, is trying to live by the values of haya in our communication, in our relationships, but also make sure we evidence the idea of excellence in what we do. And even though I wouldn't say today I'm extrovert or more extrovert than I'm introvert, I just feel that at this point in my life, I probably know better what I need today and what I need to evidence. And that's probably a thing that I think is probably one of the most critical things.
Okay, so tell me, what is Muslim Influencer Network all about? I mean, we've seen different things from you. Tell us what it does and how do you work?
Yeah, so what we do at MIN, what we try to do anyway, is we connect global and local brands with the leading Muslim influencers. And most of the time, when people think in MIN and think of Muslim influencers, the work that we do, they think that we're helping mainly Muslim organizations, or only Muslim organizations come to us to work with us. But actually, a matter of fact, for us is most of the time, they're non-Muslim organizations looking to understand, engage, connect with the Muslim market in the UK, around the world. So we provide influencer campaigns, connecting, like you said before, the likes of Anchor to Primark, UN. You know, we've worked with some really interesting brands, consulted the likes of Facebook and Unilever. Alhamdulillah, we've been really fortunate across the last 3 years. And what we look to do is just bridge that understanding gap, especially for mainstream brands. Like, they understand the importance of recognizing people of different cultures and diverse backgrounds, but are they actually able to authentically connect with people from those backgrounds? And we believe that's what we try to do for these mainstream brands across the different locations that we work in. And predominantly it's the influencer marketing, although we now offer a wide variety of services in marketing, from communication strategy to data and insights. But yeah, that's what MIN does day to day.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really, this is one of the reasons why I'm so happy that we've got you here, because I think you've done a great job to start to highlight what the Muslim market's all about, like in terms of the value of it, in terms of the fact that big brands cannot like ignore this market, right? So I think it's wonderful, and I really want to get into that stuff with you. But I just want to understand, like, because a lot of the people that come on the show, we like understanding their background a little bit, right? So, like, did you kind of study like marketing and all this stuff at uni? Did you just like not go uni? Like, what's your kind of background to get to this stage here?
So I feel like my background, you know, who I was, like I was saying before, very different to the person I am today. And at university, I did law. So, like with most Asian people or most Muslim people of Asian background, I was either going to be a medic, engineer, or lawyer.
Yeah.
I was useless at science. You know, I wasn't very good with building things. And for me, there was only one option. And I feel like my parents like planted the idea of being a lawyer at a young age. When I was 3, the first toy I remember was a gavel, which was like a judge's hammer. So like, I think they didn't really give me much option. So during like my parents' alhamdulillah, they played and still play a big part in who I want to be. I went to a very good school, alhamdulillah, and had very good education, and I'd worked with like the likes of Eversheds, one of the leading law firms, doing work placements with them. And my career was almost defined for me by my parents, and I was living this idea of probably who they wanted me to be and who I believed I should be because of what my parents were telling me and what my environment was dictating for me. So I did law at university, and it was actually during my second year when I did a placement with a QC barrister. I remember one conversation, and he was talking about the importance of networking, and he was talking about the environments, and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that idea. Like within me, even though I was like, 19, 20, I wasn't even practicing at that point. It still didn't fit. It still didn't sit right with me. And I went away thinking, really, is that who I want to be? Do I want to be 40 years old, look back on my life and think, okay, financially, I've been quite secure and comfortable. But contentment-wise, I'm actually living the values that I aspire to live towards. And then I thought I need to think of a good backup plan. So in my second year at university, I started a e-commerce business on eBay, like most people do. I bought some bracelets from at that point USA for like £4, and then sell them for like £8, and seeing people still buying them at £12 and £24.
Yeah.
Then it went from there, from an eBay store to having like market stores in the city centre of Manchester. From that, then I had my own e-commerce business that, if I would have carried on, I was projected to hit probably close to 500,000 within 18 months. And at that point, I wasn't, like I said to you, practicing, but alhamdulillah, like financially, it was 22, 23 with more money than sense. And it was during that time when I met one of the closest friends to this day of mine, and we were talking about different things. And that was one of my first meetings with him, and he had this nice designer beard. I'll never forget our conversation that day. And we were talking about things, at 22, you talk about so many silly things. And then the next minute he goes to me, do you want to go pray? And I was like, what, you, the guy that I just had all these probably inappropriate conversations, when I look back, you pray, and it's just because I have a laugh and a joke doesn't mean I don't do my fard. And I won't forget, it was the Asr prayer about 2:30, and we went to pray, and it came out thinking, subhanAllah, why have I neglected this all my life? And I went from the best period of my life financially. Within 3 months, I closed everything off because I built that business through influencers, and I was building it with influencers that I was selling clothes that the values didn't align with what I was, selling in the e-commerce business that I had. I was talking to influencers, and I wasn't probably demonstrating the best characteristics of a practicing Muslim or someone who wanted to be practicing. Talking to different people, and I thought to myself, what are my priorities and what's my purpose? And from there, I then worked for a corporate company for about a year to 18 months. Didn't really enjoy it, but it paid well. And I was trying to find my feet. I knew that I wanted to go into helping people. Like, the purpose of why I wanted to exist was, I just knew that. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know like what kind of career path I was going to go on, what trajectory I had after obviously leaving the career of law. E-commerce I'd put aside. I remember conversations with my dad, and my dad would be like, what are you doing? Like, so many people would have loved to have the opportunity that you've had. You've done placements with some of the leading, like law firms in the world. You've done a QC placement as well. Like, people would beg, like, to have these opportunities. Why leave? And it just didn't fit. And I remember, subhanAllah, my dad, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so merciful to me. I remember just saying, just be patient, Dad. I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to work out. And I remember just feeling like it's just time. Just time, stick it out. So I obviously built that e-commerce business using like different marketing methodologies, and maybe I just stumbled across finding out what works, what doesn't, and especially influencers. At that point, they weren't even called influencers. They were just people who had big profiles, and I utilized different cohorts of people to raise awareness of my products, and it worked. And after working for the corporate organization, I realized that it just wasn't for me. I needed to try and get into the sector of helping people, which was the humanitarian sector. So I applied. I remember applying for like different charity jobs. Like, I was never going to be a great fundraiser, but I tried everything. I was like, I just need to get my foot in. So I know like this has ended up being a very long background of me, but then I applied for one particular role, and this was at the humanitarian organization for Human Appeal. And it was for a marketing manager role at that point. So I had very little experience for that, but I thought, I've got to give it a try. And so what can make me kind of stand out? So instead of a typical CV, I built a website that was my CV. And I was like, hey, I'm Saif. Like, I know I don't have these skills, but this is why you should know who I am and why I care and why I'd be suited for this role. So I built that website, put a lot of effort in, and alhamdulillah, it was the time period I just gone to Umrah, and I come back and with my siblings, and I thought, you know what, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of all things, so let me try. And I built that website, sent it, heard nothing for about 6 weeks, and I thought, great, I put all this effort. I thought I was a genius as well. I was like, as you do. So anyway, 6 weeks went, and then I got a phone call, and there was the HR manager saying, we came across your CV website, and we'd like to, ask you to come for an interview. And it's like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, alhamdulillah, like maybe things are going to work out how I want. And maybe the marketing skills paid off there. The interview, like, this is, like, I know it didn't want to become a story, but it kind of demonstrates the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, it's all around us, right? And it surrounds us, and it makes us realize how grateful we should be. I remember the night before the actual interview, and I remember thinking, subhanAllah, the weather's quite bad here right now, and the snow is starting to fall. And about 2 weeks ago, all the tires in my car had become flat, so I had to replace the front two for sure. And I was thinking, would I have to replace the back two? And financially, it was a very difficult time for me, because I'd gone from living a lifestyle of thousands of pounds in the bank to moving different workplaces, and that lifestyle has still come with me. So I still had the expenses, but I wasn't making the same money. So I remember thinking, when I was changing my tires, asking my friend who was changing it, I said, do I have to change all four? And he said, yeah, you're going to have to. And I remember being absolutely financially on the limit. I was thinking, subhanAllah, like, this is really a challenge for me. And I pray, inshallah, subhanAllah, he's fattah, like, he's going to open things. But when you're going through that, it's hard to remember that he's wasi, like, his razak, like, all these things. It's hard to live that. But the night before, it started to snow. And the day of the interview, I got a call, and they said, look, there's lots of snow here in Manchester. Well, can you make it? Our HR representative isn't actually available for the meeting, but the director and manager of that department are. So would you like to still come in? I remember thinking, I had a fairly decent car, but it was awful in bad weather. I was thinking, how will I actually make it? But when I was driving to Manchester, it was perfectly fine. And I was, subhanAllah, like, maybe everything is happening for a reason. The reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted me to change the tires 2 weeks ago was to be able to get here, because on those old tires, I never would have been able to get there. And I got in and I went through the interview. And after the interview, there was just a great rapport between the director, me, the manager. And a few weeks later, they called me and they said, "You've got the job." And I was like, subhanAllah, my director said to me, when I saw your CV, you didn't have the experience, I would never have given you the job. But now I've met you, this is why I've given it you. Like, you know, maybe they saw something that I believe I don't have, I don't know, but they gave me the job. And if the HR manager would have been there, she would have just judged me on paper. She would have just said, does he tick the box, does he not? So everything happened for a reason. She lived in the really snowy part of the Northwest, so she never made it. So you asked about marketing experience. I just built it through trying, testing different things. And the period that I was at the charity was the most intense learning curve of my professional life. So I didn't study it, but sometimes it's best when you just get stuck in, get your hands dirty, as they say.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm really glad you shared that story, because I think it's stories like that that actually help us when we're going through this, and to kind of remind us that you're right, that Allah is always there. One of the things I've done actually is that, you know, in my life, I've got myself in some really sticky situations, right? And when you make dua and Allah gets you out of that situation, it's very easy to forget. So I've got this list of du'as that I made of sticky situations that I was in, and Allah really helped, you know. And that's like a really good reminder that Allah's always kind of there and helping you. So I think it's wonderful, especially because you talked about how your purpose changed and then you align to that, right? Like, you could have just, most people are not even that self-aware that they start thinking at that age that, you know, do I really want to do this? Most people would have been like, I'm with the QC, I'm going to go even further than I thought I was going to go and stuff. So I think that's amazing. And you know, with the charity thing, I think it's similar for me. Like, I kind of did a lot of corporate work. I was a project manager, I was a sales manager. But what I learned from being in IERA, like becoming operations director and actually doing things in there when you're in a small charity, it's crazy. So it's really, really interesting to hear your journey. Tell me a little bit about, so how long did you spend at the charity, and then when did you start MIN?
So I spent at the charity just under 3 years. Just under 3 years I was there. Like I said, professionally, like working in employment, it was the best period of my life. There's nothing more fulfilling than you coming in and you're raising money to help others around the world. I'd been to Bangladesh with the charity, been to Lebanon, like worked in projects in France. So I was really fortunate. Not only was I actually contributing, running like marketing campaigns with the team, but also because I was going in every time I felt like my purpose was starting to be lost, because even in charities, as you're probably aware, it can be sometimes about targets and revenue. And, you know, like it can be hard to feel that consistently. Every time I felt that, the director, the managers, and they'd all be like, oh, okay, do you want to go to like this location and meet people, you know, in the field? And every time, like, honestly, it was an amazing time, amazing experience, taught me a lot. In my third year, that's when the entrepreneur me, I recognized it still existed. And for me, as with any part of your life, when you're starting to feel a particular attribute start to wane, I think for me, the purpose of being in that charity was being lost on a personal level. Like I was stopping I just wasn't feeling it every day. And at that point, then this idea of influencers raising, you know, come to the fore, and particularly Muslim influencers. For us, we started MIN because we want to empower the influencers of today to better the society of tomorrow. And we thought we have to do that with Muslim influencers first, find a way to do that. So it's during my third year when the idea came with my co-founder, Omar Shahid, who I've, you know, like he's not here today, but I couldn't have learned anything about like the importance of valuing other people than I have through him. Like he's the real mastermind behind so many things, if not what we do day to day. He's taught me a lot. So that's where I met Omar, and that's where we've come to the point of obviously having MIN here today.
Okay, amazing, mashallah. So, you know, I saw you guys on Islam channel talking about like the kind of work that you do. It's really, really interesting, I think, as a whole. So you mentioned like Anchor, Primark, UN. Are you allowed to say like what kind of influences have you worked with that some of us might know as well?
So the influencers that we've worked with, you might have heard of public speakers like Ibn Ali Miller from America. He's the gentleman that broke up the fight between two youths, and that video got like 100
Okay,
million
yeah.
plus views. On a personal level, I've been really fortunate to help some of the leading Muslim speakers in the world. I've worked with the likes of Imam Ali Khan in the past, and on an influencer, I guess from a social media perspective, we've worked with all different types of influencers, from lifestyle to fashion to education to comedy, likes of Ali Official, Alia Jasmine on social media, Sabina Hussein. So these are people that, myself and yourself, we might not engage with or know on a day-to-day perspective, but they're huge on social media with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers.
Okay, amazing. So, like, being an influencer today, it's quite strange because I remember when I was working in Naira, I was doing a lot of research about how we wanted to get the Dawah movement out.
Yeah.
And, I read this book called Influencer. But at that time, like you said, there was nothing to do with like social media influencers and stuff. And so the whole book is actually about how do you influence society and change and all of this stuff. And I guess we don't see influencers so much like that. We probably see them more as celebrities, but obviously they do have that kind of power and everything, right? So, like when you're thinking about these influencers, because obviously you're working with people who might even have like smaller audiences, like you mentioned, micro influencers as well, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how have they kind of built their success? How have they become successful influencers, even if it's micro influencers? And what are the kind of traits that you see in these people?
I think it does vary depending on the industry. Obviously, social media and the way that it's developed over the years has aided a lot of influencers, increased the presence. I mean, today you could create a few viral videos on TikTok and all of a sudden you're an influencer with tens of thousands of followers. But that almost immediate recognition doesn't build a capacity that I think on a personal level and on an attribute level that every human being needs, which is development, patience, struggle, challenge that leads to growth. And a lot of the influencers that we've worked with or we have like established relationships with, it's been a process. They've consistently posted maybe every day on a particular area of work, and for the outside it looks like overnight success. But to them and to every human being that has a business, you've been trying to turn the flywheel, right? Trying to get things in motion for a long time. I remember reading about, the founder of Walmart, and it took them nearly 26 years before any substantial success came their way. And it was like, yeah, our overnight success took like 36 years. That's what, like roughly,
Yeah.
that's what he's saying. So influencers, obviously, that we work with, a lot of the time they built presence through Instagram. Most of the brands that we work with, they want to target influencers and communities on Instagram. Now there's more appreciation to wanting to do that on TikTok as well, because Facebook's become a pay-to-play market. Like you have
Yeah.
to post something, add a bit of budget to it to get that awareness and engagement. Whilst Instagram, it's still cheaper to acquire customers. So a lot of the time, the influencers that we work with are on Instagram. I do think, like yourself, so you're posting a lot on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is becoming an environment. Obviously, it's a B2B environment. It's
Yeah.
B2B players environment in particular. So influencers do vary depending on the industry and depending on the social media platform as well.
Okay. So when you kind of have influencers, like you identify different influencers, right? How do you kind of work with them? Because something you mentioned is very interesting. That someone's video. And I was watching this video today. Someone sent me, and I've got this habit of kind of looking at their views and looking at numbers, right? And this video someone sent me is the person's highest ever video. Every video
Yeah,
they ever did before that was like 60, 70. And this one's flew past 2 million, right?
yeah,
And so their subscribers are going to fly and they're going to
yeah.
suddenly overnight become someone different, right? So, like, do you guys kind of like, because a lot of yours is about, bettering the society through the influencers. So do you kind of help them develop, like give them a sane head and give them guidance and stuff? Or do you just kind of mediate between them and the big brands? Or how does it all work in terms of the influencers technically?
So we have influencers that are exclusive to us. So influencers that we work with, we manage their communication, the deals with brands, we do educational sessions with them. And we had a formula that we always wanted to kind of impress upon what we're trying to do as an organization in 4 key areas for an influence. So that's their life, love, learn, legacy, the 4 L's. So life being everyone's going to make money to survive. Are we helping them get the right type of deal that helps them build sustainable revenue? You're talking about love. When we say love, we mean the ties of kinship, the important people or peoples in their lives. Are we able to better their relationship that they have? Because with influence comes responsibility. And with that responsibility, a lot of influencers aren't fully owning that responsibility, or it corrodes their responsibilities in other areas of life that are still very important. So the ties of kinship, the love element, are things that we try to help them with, which is just trying to, for example, better their habits, better their environment, their structure, their schedules. That way we think that we can help them in that area. Learning for us is a big idea, because you've got to be continuously developing yourself, understanding brands, how to communicate with brands, how to communicate what your USP is, your unique selling point. Every influencer needs to know that, right? Your almost your elevator pitch, and how you continuously staying close to your purpose, which fits into the final category, which is legacy. Like, how are we working with influencers? Are we on a personal level working with the right type of influencer? And is that influencer then using their platform, although they've got to still make money and make deals and they'll have to do product placement now and then, are they actually utilizing their platform to do good? Are they trying to build a platform to do good? And we're not wanting to work with a finished article a lot of the time. And as human beings, we're very quick to pass judgment and write people off. And it goes against like so many Islamic values for me and the organization. And what Rasulullah did with different Sahaba, like he was so patient and that's leadership. Recognizing someone has potential, that they will have weaknesses, giving them the environment to grow, and recognizing that with the right advice, they can overcome their previous struggles and previous bad habits. And that's what we try to do with influencers. We work with a wide variety from a exclusive perspective, but non-exclusive brands will come to us, and if we feel that the brief matches a particular influencers that we don't manage day to day, then we work with them if the values exist there as well.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I love the 4Ls, by the way. I think it's a very good, like I saw that on the website and stuff, and I thought it's a very good structure, because a lot of the time, like a lot of people watching this, especially because of what you guys do, will be aspiring influencers, right? So they'll be watching and they'll be thinking like, I want to do it. So, like, for those people, do you think it's too late? Because we have this kind of thing, right? Oh, YouTube's like this now, or this is like this. Is it too late to become an influencer? If I've got the kind of mindset where I feel like I have something to give and I want to do it, but I'm kind of like thinking if it's really something anyone can do. So what's your thoughts on that stuff?
Yeah, there's something that we hear very commonly, and even on a personal perspective, even on a professional perspective, we hear different clients, different brand partners who we advise to build a personal brand. They'll say, okay, well, isn't it too late to try and do that particular thing? And I think it actually stems out of the idea of, instant gratification and recognition, this society that we live in, which is we almost want things immediately. Like, the reality is it just takes a lot of effort to build something. And if you can stick that out, are you comfortable being uncomfortable? Like, that for me is like, that is the process of any business person, the process of any influencer. Majority of the time, you've got to post consistently. Sometimes you don't feel like posting. Sometimes you don't, you feel like, am I just presenting the wrong message? Does it go against actually why I even started this? If you're willing to stick it out, for me, the best way is know your purpose, know your values, know your USP, like work within that framework, know your weaknesses, know your strengths. Obviously, do a situation analysis. Recognize, for example, most of the people, you're in full-time employment. To be an influencer, it's almost taking 2 jobs on. So do you have the time? Do you have the capacity to be able to keep up that presence? Are you okay when people are going to be potentially writing negative remarks around what you do? Are you going to be able to have the thickness of skin to keep persevering? Like, that perseverance and these prophetic qualities should allow you to become the influencer that you want to be. And if you're willing to do that, it's never too late. I don't believe that, Rasulullah, he mastered being the best father and the best husband for most of his life. Like, pre his prophethood, no one heard anything about Rasulullah. Oh, there's very little out there. Why is that so? Because he worked on the intrinsic first. He worked on being the best example around the people who were closest to him first. And then he became the prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was a process. Like, that took time. Like, we think that if we're not an influencer by 26, 29, then it's too late for us. It's never too late. It's never too late if you're sincere.
Excellent. That's really, really good advice, mashallah. I think it's a lot to really take on, and it does look simple because sometimes you see someone on YouTube and you think they just got a camera in their hand and they're just talking. So surely, it's so easy, but it really isn't. What I want to ask you is, like, from the influencers that you kind of follow, the ones that you work with and stuff, what kind of content do you see them doing that's kind of working well, or what kind of styles or tips or tricks or hacks that do you find consistent among like successful influencers?
Yeah, I mean, most people come to us and say, okay, we want to produce viral content. Unfortunately, there isn't like a guidebook that says, you know, do this, it goes viral. But
Yeah.
there's a framework. And for us, it's like content has to fit into four key areas. You either need to educate people, you need to inspire them, you need to either entertain them, or you need to convince them to do something worthwhile. And if you're doing one of the four things there in that framework, so if you're moving people through that cycle, you're telling good stories, you're able to relate to them, resonate, be authentic within your approach, within the way that you convey, and recognize that you're never going to be the finished article, right? You're never going to be able to just speak and the audience will listen. It's not instant. It takes time, repetition. But if you produce content within those four key quadrants, then you'll always be more successful, because that's what people are craving. For example, if you're looking to create, you know, educational YouTube content, a great way to start, because it's hard to get traction straight away, is look for partners who might be influencer partners. So people out there who are willing to give you a shout out or do very good SEO research, like type things into Google, find what people are searching, what people are thinking about, what's the intent behind that particular search, produce content around it. That will give you the initial traction. And that might be something educational. And if you can take people through the cycle, like people buy from people at the end of the day, and people, they make decisions emotionally. So you need to connect with them emotionally, give them a logical reason to listen to you, and then come back and connect with them emotionally again. Then they will be most inclined to actually listen to you and subscribe to what you do.
Amazing. Okay, that's really good. That's very clear, concrete kind of areas to focus on. What's your opinions on this whole thing around polished versus authentic? Like, so authentic could be like, right now I've got lights and, you know, I've set up the background, you know, this kind of more polished, where authentic would be like, I'm in the car and I'm kind of doing that. Like, what's your advice regarding that? Is it better to like work on the videos and work hard and work on your content, or should it be an expression of you whenever it kind of comes out? Like, what's your thinking on that?
I think it depends. First and foremost, know your goal, know your audience. So that will allow you to understand which approach you should take. And every time you produce something, if you know your goal, know your audience, you know how to relate. And that's the consequence of knowing the first two things. So polished versus obviously authentic, like in the moment content. In the moment content's a very good way to showcase and demonstrate you're accessible. It's not necessarily going to be the most effective way, although it still works, to build trust with a corporate brand. Because if someone's obviously searching for something or an organization that's trustworthy, they might be going through a criteria. Have they demonstrated credibility? Have they demonstrated that they're able to be professional? And for me, that's why it's really important you start off with the first areas, which is know your goal, know your audience. Once you do that, explore. Like you won't ever know straight away what's going to work without actually doing a test period. And we see that with clients. You know, clients come to us and they'll say, okay, unfortunately, some clients will like immediately give me some results. And unfortunately, the realistic way of approaching any marketing strategy and anything effective, there needs to be some test data. There needs to be something that informs what you're going to scale. Right. So in the Muslim environment, we tend to work with just visionary Muslims or visionary Muslim organizations to scale their product to create change. We kind of have the criteria of making sure that Muslim businesses are able to understand that there's going to be a period where there's almost like a grace period where you're going to have to stick out some sort of process, and that allows you to get the information that you need to know what's working, what isn't, and then you scale it. Like you double down on what works, and as you start to almost plateau what works again, then you explore other areas. Like for us, working with Muslim organizations, I feel that's probably the biggest challenge, is communicating that there aren't immediate results all the time. And if we're able to create, you know, community of inspiring businesses that are willing to share just that you guys have to stick it out, regularly communicate to the world that it's a process. There's got to be patience with it.
I always say that it's kind of like Muslims look at marketing as a cost rather than an investment.
Yeah.
And if they saw it as an investment, they would put it into it and continuously put into it, and then they would start to see results, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think about when you do marketing or when I do marketing, like we spend thousands of pounds on our own ads and our own funnels, and we're constantly iterating. We're always trying to work it around, right? It's never that we just put money in and we see it like a cash machine where it kind of comes out. And I remember, like on the Islam channel thing, the presenter was saying to you, "But can you guarantee results?" Right, like that kind of stuff. And I was kind of cringing because, like, I've been asked that question so many times, right? But it's like, if you really understand what investment is, you know that your capital is at risk no matter what you do. You could put your money into a bank and you could still lose your money, right? So this whole way of thinking, I think marketing is like kind of premature in the Muslim market, right? But the great thing is with guys like yourself, we're going out there and we're kind of pushing those boundaries. So I want to talk a little bit about the Muslim market, right? Obviously you're going to big brands like Primark and these guys, and you're talking about the Muslim market, right? For someone who doesn't know the Muslim market, like, what is it? Like, how big is it? What size is it? What are we talking about when we mean Muslim market, halal economy? What does it all mean?
Those are very good questions. I think when you're trying to communicate the Muslim market, the most important thing that you can do is you humanize everything. Like a lot of the time, the first time someone hears Muslim or the term halal, they're basing their ideas on notions that they've taken from media, mainstream media, etc. So the most important thing that we do is humanize, like take it down to the human level, like showcase the natural value that every human being has, that we then obviously incorporate into this economy that exists, which is backed up with data and facts. So there's so many numbers branded out there. Some will say the Muslim market's worth 2 trillion, some say 3 trillion. The halal economy represents the industries like fashion, retail, lifestyle, food, obviously being halal. But for us, it's just recognizing that each brand, each organization has different requirements, and fundamentally they want to be seen as more accessible and reflective of the society that they live in. Like we live in a multicultural society today in the UK, in the West, and globally there's a appreciation, tolerance that's increasing to needing to recognize people of different backgrounds, different ethnic identities. And that's what we try to do. We try to humanize, obviously, the Muslim market. And we do that. We think that we do it fairly well. We've got a long way to go. We have been really fortunate that whenever we've communicated these big facts about the market's huge, or it has this capacity of, of people, or this population of people right now in the UK, whether that's nearly 4 million Muslims, around the world, how many Muslims exist, or the financial value that needs to grab their attention first, right? Because a director, CEO, unfortunately, they're thinking numbers first. Yeah. So if they're in the room, we have to think, how are they thinking? Like, what are the most important bits of information that they need to hear to get their attention first? Once you have that, then it's okay, showcase the human value and the importance of connecting with others through almost a thoughtful and authentic way. And most brands are really tolerant, when it comes to that idea. That's what, when it came to our work with Primark, they were already launching a modest fashion collection because the modest fashion industry was worth over 220 billion. So there was like, okay, it's a lot of money out there. And when we presented it, we didn't want to just dangle say, okay, yeah, you can win this market, it's worth this. The reason why you need to connect authentically is because other brands have tried, like H&M had tried, but didn't actually successfully release a modest fashion collection. This is why you need to do this, to make sure you don't just showcase that you're doing something tokenistically. We don't want that. As human beings and as Muslims, we have a responsibility too. We don't want to be just seen as an organization that helps other brands make money. That's not what we're here for. That's not what we stand for. We've got a long way to go to be able to bridge that kind of the money hurdle, which every brand is interested in, and the human element, which is understand the values. But we're trying to do that. And for us, we've got to be in the environment to still try. And that's what I'd say is, obviously the market's big, know your audience and know how to communicate the important areas of communication that gives you that respect.
Yeah. No, I love the fact that you talked about it like that, because, as marketers, sometimes we can really get into the whole nitty gritty where you start to see an audience, it's 100,000 audience, and, we're just going to market to them. So I love the fact that you're really humanizing it. And I think, like you said, there's a big responsibility on you guys when you're talking to these brands about the Muslims. Kind of like you're like the way in. So it's wonderful to hear that you've got that kind of thinking about the ummah and about the kind of people within it. So for these kind of big brands and stuff, when they're coming to you, like what is it that they're kind of getting from you? Because like, you know, they've got big marketing budgets, they've got
Yeah.
big departments and all of this kind of stuff. Yet, you know, they're coming to Saif and the brothers in his team and sisters in the team and saying, you know, help us with this. Is it just that they just don't understand Muslims, or they don't understand the Muslim market, and they're kind of hoping that you're going to help them to break through because they have the resources there, right? Is it just that they lack knowledge and experience?
It's a combination of things, and I'm glad you mentioned the caveat of trying to educate after what I said, because I'll tell you a story very quickly. We pitched at a agency partner end of last year, and then speaking to Michael from that agency. So like growing up, most of my friends were white, like they were Caucasian, and they never had experienced even being in an Asian environment, other than maybe the takeaway that, you know, the Indian curry that they might have got once in a while.
Yeah.
Other than that, they hadn't experienced like simply knowing what another culture is like from the, you know, like going into an Asian person's house, like what kind of, you know, like cuisine they cook, etc. And Michael, he'd had Asian friends growing up, so he was like, after your pitch, which we loved, like he was talking about his team, we loved it. When they left, or a few days had passed, team members were like, okay, how do we actually talk to this environment? Like, how do you actually communicate with them? It's so different to what we normally work with, or to the organizations that we normally partner with. Like, how do we even get that process right? Like, so for Muslims, we think it's very simple that, okay, well, it's obvious, isn't it? This market's worth this much, and therefore you devise a strategy like this. But most global brands, the most important thing to them is their brand.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, there's nothing more important, and Muslim organizations need to recognize that, because we don't like investing in brand and awareness related strategy, but that's the most critical thing. They spent years, if not decades, if not, you know, like hundreds of years, centuries building like their brand name. So when we work with our partners, what we do is just simply simplify everything. You've got to start with understanding this audience, so having the data about the facts and figures that are important, the communication elements that need to exist. So the do's and don'ts, almost like what this cohort of people are more inclined to like. Like another example is, we had one partner, one brand that we worked with. They wanted that this is a $2 billion dollar brand, by the way.
Wow.
They worked with us, and we were really fortunate, alhamdulillah. And they said, can you get your influencers to share our Instagram page that we just launched? And the last post was actually a bacon sarnie. Like, so, like they didn't even realize, they didn't make the connection.
Yeah.
They didn't see anything wrong. Like, and we was like, you know, influencers would love to share your page, but your last post was a bacon sarnie, and look, it's the month of Ramadan. Like, we don't think to share anyway, but it's the month of Ramadan, and we don't think it's the best idea right now. And they took away the learnings, and there's like, okay, and they made amendments. So just small things like that, nuances, right? For us, it's important to focus on the small details that make a big difference. And that's what we do, from communication strategy to finding the right influences, to being able to understand how to connect everything to generate the result that the brand needs.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm really, really, you know, for me, I'm learning a lot about what you guys do as well. And I think it's really wonderful to see the kind of values that you guys are holding when you're doing this stuff. And it's really, really amazing. And, you know, in line with that, I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership, because, you know, a huge part of leadership is influence. And I really believe that as your influence grows, you naturally become a leader, right? Like, there's no getting away from it. If there's 100,000 people that watch you every single day and follow you like crazy, then you effectively are a leader. You're going to lead them here, or you're going to lead them there. So I just wanted to kind of understand, like, what's your views on leadership? What is leadership for you? What's your experience of it? Like, how do you kind of advise people on leadership?
I love the simple definition of, you know, a leader is simply a person that has followers, right? And in today's world, today's society, we've had influencers in the past that have said to us, I want the profile, I want the followers, I don't want the responsibility. And like you said, they go hand in hand, they go in tandem, right? And for me, what leadership is being, as a person that's Muslim and that has responsibility, looking after Muslim influences and working with brands to help this particular industry and collective of people. Leadership is trying to stick to your values that have been defined by your creed as consistently as possible. So there's so many different caveats within that. From, I love the idea of Rasulullah where he was the servant leader as well. So like knowing when to lead, knowing when to serve. There's the idea of wisdom, advice, emotional intelligence. There are so many different things. It depends on, your position in an organization, of course. And I think definitely the first thing that we need to do is we can't just have the best presence in the world outside of our homes, and inside of our homes we have this toxic relationship with our families. And if our wives and our family members can't actually say that we are actually a good human being, then what's the point of having all this influence? What's the point of having that public presence? And I pray, inshallah, that's what we can master first, like the responsibility at home. And once we've done that, and once we're working towards that, recognizing that responsibility, we're able to then communicate more regularly the best values that our faith leaves us with and empowers us by, how it inspires us. And when you listen to the Surah of Rasulullah, I don't just take and we shouldn't just take, obviously, Rasulullah's life and not act upon it. That's the most important thing, right? Is once you've listened, is trying to live those values that he demonstrated so consistently. And recognizing that we live in, for us, most of us, a Western world. So there's great examples from a business perspective from, what is a level 5 leader? So for those who are listening, you're probably thinking, what is he going on about there? But Jim Collins, he wrote this book called Good to Great. It's one of the classics in business. And he talks about this idea of level 5 leadership, which is a person that has personal humility and professional will, like this idea of discipline and profession. But in the business perspective, they put the company first, like always recognizing they've got to be humble with it, because as your organization grows, people demand more from you. They want to speak to you, and it can corrode your ego. So he's trying to stay humble, recognizing that we're never going to be perfect, but our journey to perfection, which is not in this life, which is the next, we can find so many things that allow us to live a beautiful life. And for me, that is leadership, which is the idea of continuously developing in the best way.
Okay, alhamdulillah. That's really wonderful, mashallah. I like that. And I like the fact that it's all about the followers, because, I read something you guys wrote, which is that, you were kind of talking about empowering the influences of today to better the society of tomorrow, right? Yeah. And this is it kind of really got me thinking now, because it's like, if we're going to influence society tomorrow, then it's going to be done through these influences, right? How do you kind of deal with the other side of it, like the kind of controversial side? There's a lot of Muslim influencers who, themselves are Muslim, but their whole way of being, the things they're talking about, the things that they're doing, are counter to what Islam is, the values that we hold. It might not be something drastic, but it might even just be materialism or consumerism or showing off or all of this stuff, right? So how do you kind of manage that side of influence, especially with the goal that you've got, which is about empowering them today so that our society will be better tomorrow, inshallah?
Yeah, so what I'd say about that is the way that we try to work with influencers is we have a explicit criteria of the type of influencers that as an organization we want to partner with. And those that aren't necessarily living those values at that moment, we don't write off. For us, we've seen transformation happen on a personal level. Like I said to you, I'd be a hypocrite if I was sat here and I said that I'm not going to work with that influencer because they're doing the wrong thing. And, therefore I'm going to write them off, or we're going to write them off. For us, is if we have the mechanism and we have the environment or the network to try and reach out to that influencer, we'll do our best to do that. And on a behind the scenes environment, we'd advise them that, what you're doing right now might not necessarily be the best thing, right? And it's trying to be sensitive and have that emotional intelligence as much as possible to give them the advice behind closed doors. So that's what Rasulullah did. He never reprimanded the youth of the Sahaba. He'd always make sure that he was understanding of their context, their environment. And for us, it's similar. A lot of the influencers that we work with are young. They're going to make mistakes. But if a particular influencer is repeatedly making mistakes, sometimes we're just not in a position to inspire them or affect their environment or advise them. Therefore, we potentially might not work with them. But it's never to write them off. You go through this transformational journey, and we, our faith, our deen is volatile. Sometimes we feel on top of the world, like maybe we've just come back from Hajj and
Yeah.
we feel incredibly spiritual, right? And other times in our lives, we're conflicted about having this platform that gives us all this attention, and then at the same time trying to remain humble and have the best values. Sometimes they don't collaborate, and there's no synergy between them in the site that you have. And for us, when it comes to influencers that are controversial right now, those that are going through something, like, it's not our place to call them out publicly. Behind the scenes, we will do our best. We'll endeavor to educate them, to have that level of communication with them, to try and get them to recognize that if it is the wrong thing that they're doing, that they recognize it first, because that's a self-awareness thing. Like, you can't just enforce. Like, my mum, I love her to bits. She'd tell me to pray all the time when I was young. Like, she'd say, like, go pray, and I'd be like, no way. Like, it's not the right thing. But it didn't work for me. You can't force someone, your idea on someone. But what you should do is try to level with them, educate them, and empower them. And over time, be consistently telling them that, what, maybe you should try this, maybe you should try that, and let them make the decision, and hope that they do inspire others in the right way.
Yeah, mashallah, very good. I think, it's like Uncle Ben always says in Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And I think that it's a very challenging thing that they're going through. Like, imagine, like, if all of our sins and everything were just broadcast out there, right? Like, it's insane to start thinking about how things would be, because the internet is an unforgiving place, right? Like, when you put anything out, like, literally, when you go on YouTube, you'll see videos which are literally amazing. Like, they're just talking about Allah, they're talking about some good. People have disliked it, right? Or there's a very neutral message, and people, they're still out there who are hating on it and all that kind of stuff. I think these people have a lot of power, alhamdulillah, to do so much good. I remember, like, I have an organization called Muslim Mastery, and we do a lot of videos to do with mindset and empowerment for Muslims. And one of my cousins, he rang me up and he says, "Oh, bro, you're famous." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, French Montana, he shared your video." And I was like, "Who the hell's French Montana?" Like, I have no idea who this guy is, right? So anyway, I go onto, like, this guy's profile, first time I've ever heard of him. And on his profile, I see that Busta Rhymes has left a comment. And I was like, whoa, Busta Rhymes left a comment on our video, because I know him from my time, right? But I didn't know French Montana. But the video he shared was called The 17 Types of Sadaqah. And it was in Ramadan that he shared it, right? So throughout his whole year, he might not do anything about Islam. But that one post that he did, probably got hundreds of thousands of views, and it was all about Islam, and it was talking about doing good, right? So even though, the influencer's not maybe that way inclined, just by doing little things here and there, and like you said, giving them that advice and not being judgmental with them, and actually realizing it's a journey that they're going to kind of go through, and they're going to make mistakes, and just like me and you make mistakes, right? But they're going to kind of correct them, and hopefully, if they have people like you around, they're going to get to where they need to get to, inshallah, in the long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're endeavoring to do. Like I said, inshallah, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Like, most of the time, we've got so much to learn, and we're trying. That fundamentally, as long as the influencers are trying, as long as we're trying, and other people around them are wanting to see the best from them and encourage them to demonstrate the best of themselves, then inshallah we will build leaders that inspire the communities for tomorrow, and we will have influences that we're proud of. And we need that. Like, fundamentally, the Muslim Ummah in the West, we need that.
Yeah.
We don't need to be so judgmental and so quick, even though we all are. We're all guilty of it, by the way. I'm not here sitting here sometimes saying, okay, I'm not quick to judge. We all are in our own ways. But we have to recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, he has written above his throne, like, his mercy outweighs his anger, and, like, there's so much in our faith that we quick to put aside, and therefore we shouldn't display our sins in public. Like, therefore we should go hard on this person, and let's be a bit more forgiving, more compassion, and inshallah we create the environments that we like.
It reminds me of something that happened. I was sitting with a group of brothers, and these guys are really amazing brothers, mashallah, like very practicing, very humble, very nice brothers, right? And they were watching this video of something very controversial that some Muslims did, okay? So like un-Islamic kind of things that they were doing. And so these 3-4 brothers, they huddled around the screen, and they're all going, "Oh, look, that's messed up, like being very judgmental, even though, like, they're amazing guys, right? And I said to them, I said, "Guys, you know what? You got to be very careful, because, like it could be that you're sitting here backbiting on them, and they actually get rewarded for the haram that they're doing that you're watching them do. And they were like, well, what are you talking about, right? And I was like, well, the truth is that that person's doing that haram thing now, but they might 3 years from today repent. And Allah says for those that repent sincerely, He actually turns their bad deeds into good deeds, right? So this person that's done this haram thing, because of his repentance, that could become a good thing for him. But because you've been backbiting and judgmenting him, that becomes a weight upon you. You know, so like the way that we are looking at people, like it has to transform for our own selves, right? It's not just about the other people. It's about transforming it for our own selves. And I think that you know, as a community, we're still. I think I don't know why, but I see us, especially the Western Muslims, as a very young community, right? Like we're maturing very, very slowly, and we're doing it in a different way when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business, or anything like this. And so I think it's really, really great, alhamdulillah, that we have people like yourself, bro, who are like, you know, thinking on that level. Because, you know, when you think of the first Muslim influencer network, it could have been something very different, you know. But, you know, you guys have your values, you're clear on your frameworks and stuff. And I think it's really, really great what you guys are doing, mashallah.
I'll make us better than what people think. I think you said something really interesting, which I'd like to touch on, which is if you're, obviously this idea of if your good deeds are making you more arrogant and taking, you know, is it better than someone's bad deeds that brings them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Is a person's good deeds that supposed to bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking them away, then what was actually better? So for me, it's kind of having that recognition of that and recognizing, like you said, that people develop, people grow, people make mistakes, and sometimes, unfortunately, others, you know, the mistakes of others are public and they're shared and they go viral. But, you know, would you like your mum to quickly reprimand you and write you off? We wouldn't like our mothers to do that. We wouldn't. That's why our mothers are who they are, because it doesn't matter what we've done in our lives, they always want us to be better. And if we can demonstrate that with others, then we create a community that are really leading through the values that was demonstrated day after day, you know, month after month, year after year. And it's a process. We pray that, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows for the Muslim community in the West to be empowered by the values that our faith asks of us to live. And that might take time, but inshallah we'll get there.
Inshallah. So, kind of coming to the end, but I want to hit on a few quick topics, right? Obviously, you're an entrepreneur. Anyone who's been through entrepreneurship, like, just like, you know, I sit with entrepreneurs and people with business, like, I just connect with them because I know what you've been through. Like, I don't know you, I don't know your background, but just by, like, you know, realizing where you are now, like, I know the ups and downs you've been through. I know the kind of, you know, the times when you looked at your bank account and gone, oh my God, and then the times you've had issues. You know, like, what is entrepreneurship really like in your opinion? Because people have this notion where they just see you and they feel like, oh yeah, this guy's just made it, he's this, he's that. But like, we're constantly climbing mountains and stuff. So what's it like for you, and why do you continue to do it?
I'd say entrepreneurship, it's not perfect, but it's progressive. Like, for me, that's what it does. Like, it helps you grow, it helps you develop, it helps you find areas of yourself that you never thought really existed. The realities are that 90% of the times you'll probably be doing things that you don't like, you don't enjoy, but 10% of the times that you love. Like, that's the reality of life, and you just learn so much about who you want to be. I think more than anything, that entrepreneurship really allows you to foster this mentality of growth and discipline that you hope leads to excellence. Like, fundamentally, it's that the realities are, like I said, you know, your struggles financially with family relationships, trying to, you know, you're supposed to be home before 8 p.m. because you want to eat with the family, and then most of the time you get home at 10, 11 and you've got to make things up. Like, that's the reality. But if you're looking for an environment to really learn about yourself and grow as a human being, this is probably the best thing that you could do. Like, me, myself, like, having the flexibility, not always, but having the flexibility to spend more time with my daughter in the middle of the week because maybe her teeth were, you know, she was teething last night. And it means that I have to spend time at home so I can be there for my wife. Like, if I was working for someone else, I might not have that flexibility. But you've got to take that responsibility. And when you go back into work, be better than you was the day before last.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just think, oh, I had a day off yesterday. You have to make it up, because the responsibility of making money is upon your shoulders. And if you're not leading in the best way, then how can you inspire others? So you want to make sure that the right structure exists, the right framework across the organization. We've got a long way to go. I'd probably say we've done about 1.5% of the journey, but we're trying to build, like, for us, our purpose is transform brands, empower influencers, unearth leaders, to unite communities and change the world. That's our group motto. And we want, within the organization, we want unearth leaders. So the team that we have, to be able to unearth leaders, we need to be demonstrating regularly the best form of leadership. And even though we're not perfectly doing that every day, we want to work towards demonstrating that more consistently. So entrepreneurship is, I've never learned as much in my life as I have in the last 3 years, alhamdulillah, like, because you have to learn everything, like, even though I had businesses before, like, in my business before, it was B2C. I was selling like products that were maximum £60 or £90. Here I'm selling, high ticket items to B2B corporations that take sometimes 6 months to sell. Like, it's a completely different mindset. So you learn so much, and that's the biggest blessing. That not only is it like knowledge, right? It's hikmah, like, and that is a gift when we think about, like, the people that have been described as having hikmah, like whether that's Luqman al-Islam, Ibrahim al-Islam, the prophets. Like, that's such a gift, and we pray that inshallah we can be gifted with the perfect idea of wisdom, if not in this life, then the next. Inshallah.
It's really interesting what you said about growth and development, because before I started entrepreneurship, like, I had already been a sales account manager, I'd been a project manager, I'd been a head of operations, I'd even done like counselling. I was a counsellor for 5 years on a helpline and stuff, and so I kind of felt like I was a finished article, right? And I was like, I've grown this, I've taught, I've done training, I've done all this, and I was like, but I want to grow, so let me do entrepreneurship. And my God, like, the stuff that I grew and developed through entrepreneurship, it shocked me. It really shocked me that how come all those 10, 15 years didn't develop like all of these elements of you, So I think it's really, really amazing, but it's hard. You've got to stick it out. Like, like you said, like, you're, mashallah, you seem who's someone who's like value driven, and you're thinking about growth and doing. I think if you keep growth and development at the forefront of your mind, like, it's very helpful, because there's been times in our past, like me and my business partner, that we've been sitting and we've been saying, oh, we haven't got this, and I always try and remind them. I said, remember, like, it's not about what we get, it's about who you become. Right? And if you can become that person of value, or that person that has left a legacy, or that person that's even pleased Allah, right? That itself is success. Like, even if we don't get to the millions or this or that, who you become is more important than what you get. And I think if you're in it for that, like, it'll make you a lot easier, and inshallah you'll be there for the long term as well. Okay, great. So as we're kind of ending the show, like, tell me some of the tips and the tricks and the hacks and the software and the resources and the books. Like, imagine, like, because you guys are like on point when it comes to everything that you're doing. So what are the big softwares that you use? What are the books that you always recommend? Just imagine that you were with someone for a few minutes to give them recommendations. What would you kind of recommend from a business, entrepreneurship, leadership type perspective?
Yeah, great question. I'd say, addressing the books thing, I think, like, there's certain books that I'd recommend from a personal level. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Like, if you want an environment hack, if you want to know how to define a better schedule, I'd say Atomic Habits is the one. You need to read Good to Great. I've actually not finished that. I've had snippets of that, and whenever I had time, I'd try and go back to it. But Good to Great, if the elements that I've read, it's incredible. If you want to build a brand that's enduringly strategic, like, you have this idea of being a brand, right? You might last for 2-3 years, but how would you get to 10, 20, 50, 100 years? There's a great book called Enduring Strategic Brand by Luc Badan, who's the former CMO of BP. And he talks about these 14 principles and how to connect them all by just interviewing the best businesses that have existed in the last 100 years or so. So that's another book that I recommend. The Strategist is a book by Cynthia Montgomery. She's a Harvard professor. Another fantastic book as to how to build structure. They're all different books. Like, one is about habits, one is about like scale, one is about structure. And then the final book, I'd say, obviously one is about being a great company. And the fifth book and the final one, just to add a bit of fun to it all, is probably Shoe Dog by the founder of Nike. Like it's just a fantastic memoir. When you want a easy, like it's just literally a page turner. You probably read it in a weekend because you enjoy it so much. So they're the books that I recommend that I like maybe felt like I benefited from. If not read them all, definitely benefited from snippets. And I give a bonus book, which is the Checklist Manifesto. So this doctor, he studies the value of checklists, right? He went and studied it for years and saying how organizations that have checklists at the center, at the core of what they do, are more successful. So he studies like Boeing and he studies like, the air industry, airline industry, and all these different industries from engineering, manufacturing. And he just showcases like people who have lists and simply tick things off are more successful. And it's a fantastic book, a really good read. I recommend that. When it comes to systems and software, there's a book called Objectives and Key Results. So it's called Measure What Matters, and it's by a guy who invested in Google in the early days, and it's using IBM's framework. So this is a very business narrative, but John Doe's Measure What Matters creates this idea of objectives and key results, saying that if you're going to do anything business, you need to know why you're doing it, the objective, and how you're doing the what, really, and the how, which is a key result, which is measurable. And that produces, or a software was built called GTM Hub off the back of this formula. And it's great if you've got an organization, knowing everyone's objectives, how they're connected to each other, having communication as a team, saying, okay, this is going well, this isn't. I'd say that's really good. I'd say Slack, if you're an organization that needs to regularly communicate, you don't want WhatsApp for desktop. Get rid of that. Honestly, like productivity. And I'm a person that suffered from WhatsApp for desktop, and we had our productivity simply corroded in Ramadan, so we replaced it with Slack, and it creates like borders, right? So you know that Slack is for business, and obviously just having that massively enhances productivity. And the other tools I'd recommend is, honestly, I'd say everyone in your organization, instead of just spending a lot of time on like Insta and Facebook, like unlock LinkedIn because it's a great learning tool. But business, fundamentally, you need to have a network to be able to sell to and work on. And Sales Navigator, which is it's expensive, but having it allows you to access different people. And you'd be surprised at how much you learn through LinkedIn.
Amazing. Okay, that's a great list. So, Saif, if they want to get a hold of you guys and they want to find out more about you, where do they go?
You can obviously find us on LinkedIn, but our website is wearem.i.n.co. So wearem.co. You'll find what we do there. I'm Saiful Islam on LinkedIn, or Shahid, my co-founder. You'll probably learn from him and a lot more from him, so go check him out instead. And obviously, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook, but that's where you go to find out more. We also, like you said, we have our publication, which is Muslim, MBSLIM. We've been really fortunate to have been featured in Forbes and BBC. So if you're looking to contribute to the creative Muslim sector, we're looking for writers, contributors to help grow our platform. Even though, alhamdulillah, we have over 500,000 people who subscribe to our content or follow, and that's where you want to go for the publication side of things.
Wonderful. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Jazakallah khair for all your time, for your wonderful advice, and I know everyone watching would have really got lots of benefit, and you've really played your part, in them becoming better leaders and CEOs. So Jazakallah khair, thank you so much for being here, bro.
Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, this is the Muslim CEO Show. I hope you enjoyed the episode. For me, it was an eye-opener because I think that the way we think of influence is very different to the amazing work that MIN is doing. And, if you're someone who's thinking about, becoming an influencer, or you are an influencer, I would definitely, speak to them, because it's great to have someone with the kind of level head you see from Saif, on your side and being there with you and helping you and guiding you and stuff. So it's great that we've had these guys on the show and stuff. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure that you do that and check out the free training that we have at muslimceo.com. And then inshallah, till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.